Hey everyone, this is Ricky with Spoiler Force Podcast, courtesy of Popluck Podcast. You can find more episodes of Spoiler Force Podcast on Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, YouTube, or on Facebook at facebook.com/popluckpodcast.
This is Jensen. You're listening to Spoiler Force Podcast.
It's a LP beat.
Alright, so this is episode 32 of Spoiler Force Podcast. My name is Ricky. Thank you for tuning in. This week is a treat because not only did I have my previous guest, Kinang Vang, on, I have another special guest, one who I've been following since 2012. I learned how to play the guitar through his guitar tutorials and overall just like the story of my guest here as well, because I actually knew them before the major change or like what they wanted to do with their life, and it's something that I'm trying to educate myself with as well. So without further ado, this is my guest, Jensen Trani. Thank you so much for giving me this time and for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow, 2012?
Yeah, because I was like fresh out of high school, and then I was trying to pursue like mixed martial arts when I was in high school, but I got like a neck injury. And music was something that kind of helped me through, I guess, that rough time, and it was very therapeutic for me. So with my first, or not my first job, but like I worked at American Express in Dearborn, Michigan, and that was like a job where I was actually making decent money for someone who was only like 18, 19. And what happened was I decided to buy myself a guitar, and I bought like an Epiphone 90 or something like that. It was on sale at Guitar Center for like $100. I bought that, and then the first song I learned how to play was "Grenade" by Bruno Mars, and that was actually through your Mahalo videos. And since then, I've been hooked because like the way how you, I guess, broke everything down and during that Mahalo video stuff, you made it very like detailed, and I love the camera angles too. So it was really good to see like all the chord changes and the positioning and whatnot. And then I started following your actual channel, and that's when was learning like simple like tricks, like kind of just like plucking the strings, or kind of like, because my hands are, or my hands are not small, but like my fingers are kind of short. So like the way how you played, I kind of related to that too, where you kind of have different positionings and whatnot with with major chords. So I learned a lot from you during that time. But that was actually before you transitioned, right? And the first time I met you was back in, or at least but the first time I really met you was in 2016. It was in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I don't know if you remember. It was during the Chris Perica tour.
Yeah, I remember the venue. I don't remember the name of the venue, but yeah, I remember, and we hung out and talked afterwards, and
Yes, yep,
yeah, totally
yep,
remember.
yeah. And then one of the things that stuck out, I remember from that conversation, it was like I said, I missed when you had the mohawk, and you're like, yeah, but it was like too much work to do, and
The Mohawk took a lot of product, took a lot of time.
but yeah, and I've been following you on Instagram and stuff too. I know you're not too active on Facebook, but on Instagram I was following you, and then it was just this year, and then I saw your transition story, and I guess as a fan too, and I was at first I'm gonna be honest, at first I was like really surprised. I didn't see that coming at all,
Mhm.
and then watching your videos that you had on your channel, listeners who are listening to this, you can find Jensen's like story also on her YouTube channel. The description, I'll have all the links and stuff too, but it's a two-part video, and I shared it on my podcast too, so that listeners can watch it beforehand. Yeah, and just like hearing your story, and just it really like opened my eyes to to the community that you're into. And I'm trying my best not to sound like ignorant at or something, because like this is the first time I'm having like someone who is a transgendered person on my podcast, and I honestly would like to learn more and how to, I guess, be more politically correct. But anyways, like your story itself was, honestly, I was very touched by it. You never know who you're meeting, how they really feel.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of fans and followers were very surprised by it, but my core community of people have always known, or there's always been something that's been slightly off. So when I came out to my close friends and family, most of them were just like, ah, yes, that makes sense. Because
So, oh, go ahead. I'm
I've
sorry.
known this for a long. That I've known this for a long time, and you saw in the video I talk about being 3 years old and saying, I'm a boy. Why aren't people calling me a boy? And my mom trying to explain, well, because you're not. That's You're just a girl, but you can be a tomboy. You can like sports. You can do all these things. You can wear boy clothes. And I just kept saying, no, I'm a boy. I'm a boy. And then years and years of people saying, no, you're not, and you can't be, uh, repressed that for a long time. So it wasn't until last year, 2018, where I finally was like, this is what I am, and I'm willing to make the change to have this happen.
So, how did your family feel about that? Were they just accepting once you like made the change too?
Absolutely. My family, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky. Um, and again, I've been talking to my mom about this since I was 3. So she knew that there was this underlying thing, because even when I stopped talking about it, I just kept going back to, but something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. So she she knew, she anticipated. She didn't know when it was going to happen, how far I was going to go with it, but she knew. And my other family has just been amazing. And it's kind of run the gamut of, you know, we love you, go for it, to like, this, we love you, this does make me uncomfortable, I don't understand it, but we love you regardless. So I'm very lucky, and I think setting up a safe space to talk about it and understand people's fear and concern, and that they don't quite understand, and knowing that now might be the first trans person that they're interacting with. And I remember that feeling when I came out as gay when I was 15, when that was still not new, because that sounds ridiculous to say like being gay is new.
But it was still like socially unacceptable at the time, or like they looked at you weird.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It was just as, you didn't have hardly any gay kids. I came out at 15, so you didn't have any gay kids. Nobody really knew a gay person in where I grew up, is in a small city in Denver. So I remember this feeling of like, wow, I'm the first gay person that these people are meeting. And now coming out as trans, going, chances are I'm the first trans person that they're meeting. So I'm very comfortable with people asking questions and being vulnerable. Like you were saying, you don't want to be ignorant, and my thought is, just ask what you want to ask. I'm a safe person to ask it to. Not everybody is going to be as relaxed about it, because it's very, very sensitive, very sensitive. Um, so you might ask the same question with the same kind intention to somebody else, and they take it the wrong way, or they don't feel like it's appropriate, and to each his own. But for me, I'm always like, ask me anything, because I'm a safe person, as long as it's with the intention of understanding and not being disrespectful. Or does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's why I'm like I want to thank you for again for the opportunity, because just based off your video, you mentioned that um when you were making the change already, like you were getting nasty comments on social media, but like before that, you were already getting that as a woman before too. So I
Yeah.
I, I liked your mindset on that, where you're like, well, if I'm getting that already, then screw it. Like who cares what
Hmm.
they think? Um, but again, like that's great to know that your family was so supportive of you. Was it the same thing as well? Like when you first came out as gay, was it the same kind of support system too?
Yeah. Yep. My family has been amazing. I don't know how I got so lucky. I don't know, but they are just an amazing group of people that are so willing. Like that's what I love about them. They're just so willing to go with whatever's happening. And yeah, it's wonderful.
So how are you currently feeling? I know that you were doing testosterone or something like that. Are you still doing that kind of program now too?
Yeah, so testosterone, I get injections once every other week. And I'll be doing that probably for the rest of my life because if you want the effects of testosterone, you have to keep getting testosterone put in your body. And overall, really feeling good. There's been a lot of ups and downs, and part three of the video series is going to come out before Christmas, hopefully. And that one was like right in the middle of feeling very low. I was having lots of highs and lows being on testosterone and stuff that you don't think about, and um, you can't anticipate it until you're in the middle of it. But finally, my levels have evened out, and I feel really good.
Was it a lot of mood swings that you were experiencing too?
Yeah, because you get the injection, and you kind of go on this high, and you peak out right at like 8 to 10 days, and then you start to crash as the testosterone leaves your system. So it was just a lot of like, I can do anything. And then the next week is like, I can't get out of bed. Everything sucks. Why am I doing this to myself?
Now, I do want to bring up this too. Like, was the voice change the first thing that you noticed when you were doing the testosterone program?
Yeah, that was one of the first things that happened. And it's slow and continues to move around. So it's not, when one thing to mention about transitioning is you're never done. So I think a lot of misconceptions are that once you start taking testosterone and you have top surgery or bottom surgery, then it's like, oh, okay, you're done. You have transitioned. And you go, no, not quite. It's an ongoing process of change. So I forgot your original question. What's your
Oh
original
no,
question?
you've answered it. No, because like I again on Instagram, like your stories, you always have the I guess the puberty changes, right? And I
Yeah.
remember the first video where you were going through like your voice change, and it was like it sounded like us 12-year-olds like going through puberty, the voice
Yep.
cracking, and
Yep.
it was just hilarious watching the like each video that keeps going on with the updated voice change and whatnot, and um, it's honestly for me, it's still kind of surreal because I still remember like when we first talked in person, like how your voice was then, and then
Hmm.
now that we're talking, it's like two completely different people.
Yeah.
Like if I was to meet you without meeting you the first time, I would not have known. Like I couldn't tell.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a big thing of like, I'm I've done thousands of videos, right? Between my stuff, Mahalo and Fender. I think I did over 1,000 videos for Mahalo alone. So I was very used to hearing my voice as is, and that was such a big deal for me of not wanting that to change. Saying I don't want my voice to change. I like my voice. I know what it sounds like. I'm comfortable with it. People are comfortable with it. Um, but then once it did start to change and it started to get deeper, I was like, oh my, this isn't so bad.
Going through all this therapy too, like I saw your workout photo on Instagram. Like you're getting some gains now, and
Yeah,
do you
I am.
physically feel a lot better too?
I do. I physically feel better. I'm working out consistently. I'm building muscle in a different way, which is also because of the testosterone. So my shoulders are widening and my hips are starting to slim, and it's a lot easier for me to build muscle. So it the gains started to come really fast. which made me respect, when you see really cut women,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
made me have so much more respect for that, because to get that kind of definition, women have to work twice as hard. So being both, working out super hard as female born, and then working out super hard with testosterone, I was like, oh yeah, women have to work twice as hard to get this,
So it
because
felt
it
a
came
lot
so
easier for you
fast.
then? Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's also the physical, the physicality of being able, excuse me, it's the physicality of being able to look in the mirror and see more of a male frame slowly, because that's part of the dysphoria, is when you look at yourself and you have small shoulders and larger hips, you're not being read as a man. And for me, at least, I didn't feel like a man, like I could see that, um, which was very painful and difficult. And now that it's starting to happen, it's like, yes, this is what I always saw in my head for myself.
You mentioned gender dysphoria in your videos too, and is that something that you're still going to therapy for?
Um, well, I'm in therapy for so many things, so
Oh,
many things.
okay.
um, uh, Again, it's an ongoing process as far as the transition, because we're still dealing with, because right now I don't read as male. So like when I'm at the grocery store and stuff, I get ma'amed all the time. So though my community knows that I'm a trans man and knows what pronouns to use and what I prefer, the just walking around in life, I still look like a female, but it's slowly starting to change. Um, so in therapy, we do have to talk a lot about that, of how I want to represent myself to strangers, um, and how far I want to go with. Do I tell the Uber driver my pronouns are he and him? Like, is that worth a fight? Is that worth it? Or do I just like, yeah, yeah, you can call me she. That, no worries.
So you do want to get to the point where like when you get noticed in person by strangers, like they call you by your correct pronoun, right?
Yeah, my ideal at this point, and it could change, because one thing about this whole process is you never know until you get there. So you think, this is what I want, this is how I want to be, but then you get there and it's a different story. So what I want for myself right now is to be able to, that I read as male to strangers, like they don't even think about it. Like it's not even a question of like, is that a man or a woman? It's just like, oh yeah, that's a guy. And then have it be like, actually, I'm transgender.
Oh, okay.
That's
That makes
that's
more
my
sense.
ideal. But I have a really good friend who's trans, who thought that they wanted that as well, until the testosterone started changing their face, and they felt like it looked, that they realized that they liked their face the way that it was. So they did not want to read as male. They wanted to read as more gender neutral. So again, it's like, you don't know until you start to see it. You can plan all you want for, this is how I'm going to feel, this is what I'm going to like, this is what I'm not going to like, and then you get there and you're like, oh, this is not what I expected, or this is better than I expected. But I noticed tons of differences the last year in my face shape, and I like it. I really like it.
So physically, your face is actually changing too, then?
Yes. Yeah, if you especially if you look at side by side pictures, I don't know if I posted anything recently of my face. I'll send you something. I'll send you something from last year and this year, and you'll be like, "Oh, yeah, 100% different
Okay.
face."
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to that because like now I mean, I haven't seen anything side by side, so to me, like I think your face is still the same.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
so maybe I'll definitely look at the differences now. Do you feel like facial hair growing on your face too? Do you feel any of that?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's very light. Um, it's a little bit darker than like peach fuzz, but it's growing a lot longer. I have a couple like whiskers on my chin. Um, Definitely that is coming in for sure.
So do you plan to grow out like a full beard then, or try
I-
to?
If I can, yeah. I'm Italian and Filipino, so like my Italian side is very hairy. My Filipino side is not. So it's going to be interesting to see like where I end up landing.
You mentioned that you were still with Fender. That you're still sponsored by them too, right?
I work for them freelance.
Oh, okay. That's okay. I always thought they were sponsored by them, but not that works too.
I'm
You still work with them.
They take care of me. They absolutely take care of me.
Was that a concern too? Like when you were going through your transition, like affecting your jobs and whatnot. Was that something you were concerned about too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was very afraid because I've made a career off of being a female guitar player. Like that's part of what made me stand out with all those Mahalo videos and the instructional videos is like nobody looked like me. And to have a female or, female presenting person or female born person um, teaching guitar and being good at guitar and a wacky personality. I was going to say funny personality, but I don't think everybody thinks I'm funny. I think I'm funny.
Uh,
But I didn't look like anybody else. And part of that is, people are just fascinated by females who can play guitar or can do anything in a male dominated uh, career. And so that was a big thing because I knew that a lot of why I was getting hired for stuff was solely based on being a female and going, well, where am I going to fit then if I don't present that way? Or there's going to be a time when I don't look female at all. Will I work? Will people be interested in what I have to say around teaching and my experience? Because I won't stand out anymore. I'll just look like a guy playing guitar, another guy guitar teacher, which is there's nothing wrong with guy guitar teachers, but it was a huge risk that I had to take. I was so miserable that, and I think I talk pretty candidly in these videos, but I had a choice of I either transition or I kill myself.
yeah.
That was where it came to uh, last year before top surgery. Of there was no other options. I couldn't keep living the way that I was, but I was so scared. So I was like, all right, you have a choice, Jen. You kill yourself and have it be over, or you transition and you take a risk and see what happens, see what's on the other side.
Wow. That was I'm speechless. Like I never would have had thought of it like that, but um, I guess how did it feel? I mean, like when I guess before when you were still female born, and I guess it really went based on your looks too, and I think that does kind of like get like mess with you mentally too, because like now your jobs are like you feel like it's not so much about skill level, now it's about like how you kind of just present yourself. Like it's something that I don't know. I think that honestly I think that that's kind of like I don't know. I can't find the right word for it, but it's something that you don't want to be known for, right? As also as a musician, like you kind of want to let people know your skill level without just judging you based on your physical presence, and just how you were speaking about that now, and I realized like wow, it must have been really frustrating to you know before your change. Like that must have been really frustrating to feel like maybe that's why they're hiring me. Did you feel any of that at all too?
It was mixed. It was so mixed because I've gotten incredible jobs that were amazing, that taught me so much. that I got in the door because I was female, which I think is wonderful because, on some level, you don't get a lot of opportunities again as a female. Because I've also not gotten jobs just because I was female. And so it's such a mixed bag. I don't feel one way or the other, but it was difficult to, I would do interviews and, oh, Jen Trani, the female guitar player. And I was like, oh, I just want to be a guitar player. Because you'd never hear, oh, Eric Clapton, male guitar player.
Right.
Not that I'm up there with Eric Clapton by any means. But you never hear that, but you just hear, female guitar teacher, female guitar player, which irritated me for multiple reasons. But it got me, I wouldn't have got the Mahalo gig had had it not been for that. They were looking for a female guitar instructor. There's so many gigs I wouldn't have gotten if I were a man. So I can't say one way or another. Yes, it was frustrating, but also I worked because of it. Not I worked, but I got in the door. I got in the door and then I showcased my skills and went from there. But
Yeah, so I guess pretty much like just the whole idea of being labeled is something that you don't really want then, right? It's kind of you just want them to accept you for just kind of who you are. And right now, now that you're male, that's something that you want, I guess, society to see you as, instead of just like slapping on a label on you and saying, that's Jensen right there.
hmm I like the idea of, because I'm actually a very reserved, shy person. So I like the idea of presenting as male, and as you get to know me, then you find out more of the story, of the layer of it. But if I'm just walking around, again, if I'm just going to the store, if I'm just getting in an Uber, if I'm just going to a restaurant, then yeah, I want to be called sir without any hesitation. But I also want, as I get closer to somebody who maybe won't know off the top that I was born female, uh, I want to share the complexities of my story. Because even though I've always felt like a boy or a man, or I've always wanted that, I'm still raised and conditioned as a female. So I think that's the other thing with like, oh, transition. Because one of my friends was like, well, you don't need to worry about that. You're a man now. I think it was like being afraid to walk down the street. Like, well, you don't need to worry about that. You're a man. I'm like, I have 38 years of being afraid to walk alone down the street. And you're conditioned and raised as a female, and that means something. And you don't realize how much you are conditioned based on your gender until you start to change your gender. So I think trans people have such a unique perspective on life, because then you start to understand how you are absolutely treated and talked to differently based on your gender, positives and negatives.
With that in mind too, it's some now that you get to see kind of like both spectrums of both genders. And is that, I guess, the mentality of it, is that something that, I guess, and you mentioned that being conditioned, right? And I guess now that you're a man, does the, I guess, as your friend was saying it to you, like, do you feel like there was like stereotypes that kind of like followed with you too, like, okay, like you're a man now, so go ahead and be a man, don't be afraid, that kind of idea?
Well, yeah, funny. That's funny that you say that, because a couple people have commented on my videos, like, because I cry a lot in those videos. But a couple people have said, like, if you're gonna be a man, you can't cry. I'm like, what? Okay, nope. That, what their perception of masculinity and male is. And what's nuts is that even my close guy friends hug me differently. And so I realize how there's this disconnect with men and their emotions and their intimacy level with other men. because of how it's going to be read as weak, or what they would call gay or sissy or whatever. Like my really good men friends started hugging, like shoulder hugging me, or like that side hug,
Right.
when we used to hug like big bear hugs, and they're like, well, you're a man now, like that's what we do. I'm like, oh,
It's like,
what?
yeah, we just dab it up and that's it.
Yeah, exactly, where it's like, well, you used to bear hug. I'd come in and like jump on your back, or like it was so much more affectionate. So that's one of the things that I'm the difference. And like, oh yeah, well, you can't cry, well, you can't show emotion, well, if you're going to be a man. I'm like, well, that doesn't work for me at all. So it's redefining for myself what masculinity actually is, and how do I want to be, what is my definition of being a man. I get to decide that. But it's wild. It's so wild.
Yeah, like especially like because if, for example, like if I was to go and bear hug some of my friends, I'd definitely get looked at really differently. Like
Yeah.
some of my close friends, like we joke around and stuff, but like when I think about it now, how insensitive that is. It's for being male born. It's like we don't think much of it at all. And when it comes to like people who are transitioning or even gay men, like they're more affectionate versus like how I was just saying, like how most guys just kind of do the whole dab up and just like, all right, we'll see
Hmm.
you later, and there's no big hugs and nothing. Like there's very limited affection because like you,
Yeah.
for me, like my dad's like that. Right? He's not physically affectionate, so all my life that's how I kind of am with everyone else too. I'm just like, okay, like I don't know. I think the mindset too, like where you talked about masculinity and just like the mindset of that is something that a lot of men don't kind of talk about, and it's something that they don't want to talk about too. So I guess being I don't know, now that you're a man too, do you see that differently too now? Like how a lot of men don't talk about their emotions, or I guess don't put their guard down, and it's always like some sort of tough front.
I'm seeing it a little bit more for sure. And again, I'm only a year into the transition, so I don't feel like a man, and I don't feel like people relate to me as they would just a regular guy. I think that's going to change as I start to pass more and more. But just starting to get a taste of the difference between, like, women, oh my god, women hug each other, they get up in each other's faces, they kiss each other on the cheek, and like, because that's what's interesting, is the women in my life are still as affectionate, if not more. And like we're just all over each other, like hugging and all these things. And this is straight women, gay women, queer women, like there's no issue about that. But then seeing how the men started to change, of like, okay, you're in the boys club now, cool, here's a little shoulder hit. Like, what? And I'm reading this great book, about a transgender man. It's called Amateur, and he's learning how to box. And he's just starting to see how the men relate to him in the gym, and the men in the gym don't know he's trans. So it's just a fascinating read, because I'm just barely starting to experience it, just a little tiny taste here and there, but I know it's going to happen more and more. But it definitely is like, oh well, no wonder you guys are so angry. You don't get any hugs.
You brought up a great point with boxing, like that was um transgendered people in the sports community. That's been like something that's been talked about recently, especially in the collegiate wrestling. I don't know if you follow any of that, but there's been some cases where where not so much where a woman who's transitioned to a man, but a man who's transitioned to a woman or identified as a woman, and they wrestled the opposite gender, and that's been like a huge like debate.
Yeah.
Um should like trans people have their own league, or should they still compete in the male or female division and whatnot? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know what you're talking about because I, therefore, I'm big into MMA, right? I love MMA. And I was following Joe Rogan for a bit because I love his commentary on MMA, but he's been bringing this up a lot to the point that I had to unfollow him because I think it's very, very tricky. I agree. Uh, I don't think male born should be competing with female born. They have having testosterone in your body for that long, even if you're taking testosterone blockers and estrogen, you still have developed this muscle mass and this strength that gives you an unfair advantage. So now there's not enough because people keep saying, well, just have transgender people make their own league, and you go, there's not enough of them to actually have that happen because the cases that are happening are like one or two or three cases, but it's been shot up into the media as if transgender people are ruining sports. I think I saw that. I think that was a headline, and I think actually Joe Rogan said something like that of like that we're ruining sports. And I'm like, they honestly, the cases are so small. The percentage that this is happening is so small. There's a way bigger issue with steroids in sports than there is with like steroids are ruining sports, not transgender people. Like there are other issues that are happening
Right.
that
Like there's lots of fighters that are like doing drugs, and that's kind of like just thrown under the rug. But the moment there's someone
yeah.
in a different community trying to do something, and it's like, oh my God, this is all hell broke loose and whatnot.
Yes, exactly. How many people have you known or heard about in any sport that have been popped for steroids or some kind of like especially in MMA, there's all these people getting popped all the time, right? And I'm sure it's I don't know, but in wrestling, I'm sure there's lots of stuff that goes on. Lots of breaking of the rules, you know, of things that happen way more than a transgender person coming in and wanting to wrestle. I agree it needs to be figured out. I don't have the answer, but I do think it is not fair. And because I did see something like a transgender female was breaking all these weightlifting records for the women's category and go, well, of course, Sarah. I don't think that's fair, but I also think it's it's so slim the amount of times this is happening. But if you keep seeing the same story over and over and over and over and over again, you think, oh my God, it's everywhere. Transgender people are everywhere and just trying to ruin all sports. And you're like, no, that's not the case.
I think it's like that for most like trending cases where it's always like a small vocal group that's always like making the biggest scene, and then that
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
trended, and then it affects the entire community now because now the community's got to be like they got to defend themselves now. Like we're not like that, but these people are like that, and it's just like endless bickering back and forth, and like that's how all the stereotypes get made, and then it's just endless like havoc.
Yeah, it's none of this is blowing things out of proportion is not good. I think it needs to be a case by case basis. And like I said, I do not have the answer for this, but I think there are other more important things. If you're going to clean up sports, that you should deal with first.
Right,
And
yeah, because like there was cases too where like people were thinking that okay, well if there's athletes that's popping steroids and getting caught for it, why not just make them a league, right? Have a league where people are
yeah,
clean, and have a league where people are
that's
all drugged up.
totally. Go back to do you follow MMA at all?
Oh, I've been
Do you watch
watching
it?
that stuff since I was like in first grade. The
Oh,
first my very first like exposed fight that I watched on TV was on. I still remember this clearly because I was with my dad. We had direct TV at the time. My dad was flipping through the channels, and he's not too big into it, but he knows like the fighters that trended at the time.
Hmm.
And the very first fight I watched was BJ Penn versus Kao Uno, and that
Mm-hmm.
when I remember watching it, and Kao Uno threw the flying kick and missed, and then BJ just bashed his face in within like 10 seconds, and it was done. And
Hmm.
since that fight, I was like, this is something I'm into. Like, I can
Hmm.
watch this. And since then, I've been watching and following, and I've done some training, and I'm not great. I some people like take it off, like, take it like they misread what I, because I'm such a huge fan, so like they all automatically assume like, oh yeah, Ricky's an MMA fanatic. He does all this stuff. And like, it's funny because in high school I had this friend who was like, don't mess with Ricky, man, he does UFC, and that made me cringe so bad. I'm like, UFC's the
He
brand, it's
does
not the sport.
UFC.
And I hated it because when I was in wrestling, all the guys, like, I was the target because of that. And like, I
Mm.
never bragged about it, but it was something that I loved. And yeah, it's I love the sport. I follow like all the other like promotions like Bellator, ONE FC. I watch like Glory Kickboxing, K1. I love it. I could talk about that topic for days. But yeah,
But you remember the difference in body type before USADA.
yes,
They were just jacked. Like
yes.
those heavyweights were just jacked. And now what the heavyweights actually look like.
Like Brock Lesnar and Vitor Belfort were the ones that are
Yeah.
super noticeable. Like, if you look at Vitor when they allowed TRT the first time for the first
Mhm.
couple years, his traps were like huge.
Yeah.
He
So
looked like
like,
he was in his early 20s again for being in his near 40s.
yep.
And then he was like throwing the flying kicks and the reverse kicks. And he landed that spinning kick on Michael Bisping, and you're like, holy crap, man! TRT is like really helping these older fighters. And then you realize like that's also dangerous too, because
Hmm.
now you're having guys who are clean fighting guys who are being passed for TRT.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
I always found that really dangerous. And as someone who's grown up in the sport, like, I think it's always safety first. Like, you want
Yeah.
to be fair, as in like you're both clean, you both make weight and whatnot. And I always found it funny that people were like getting away with that stuff, and then like the moment someone like Nick or Nate Diaz smoke weed, and all hell broke loose too.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. But yeah, I just think sports have bigger things to
Yeah.
deal. But I
I,
do think that would be really funny to just have a steroid league where you're just all jacked up on steroids, but everybody is. So it's not a big deal.
I think Russia is like the closest to that, because like
Mm.
I think recently, I don't know, I forgot what the name of that documentary was. It was on Netflix. They popped all those Olympic wrestlers and whatnot. Yeah, but Russia, like, their leagues are crazy too, because like the way how they promote their leagues too. Like, they'll have like a 5v5 MMA match and all that weird shit going on. And
Mm.
but yeah, like, I always, yeah, I don't know. I think like with I think that's the huge misconception too, because like fighters being on like steroids or TRT, and then like someone who's trans going into the sport, and then you think like, okay, they're on steroids or TRT, they have the advantage too now. And I think there's like that huge misconception of that, where like you're using it to where you're using it to cheat, and then you're using it to kind of like make a lifestyle change.
Well, and again, I don't know a ton. I don't know a ton, and I don't know a ton of cases, but it's usually like what people the people that are the loudest are angry at trans women because they've had the testosterone in their body for so long, being male born. So trans women going into female born, that gives them an unfair advantage. And as far as trans men, I think a lot of people get nervous about, well, I don't want to fight a quote unquote female. I don't want to box a female, but it's also they don't want to lose to a female born person, whether they're trans,
Right. It's
even if
a, it's
they
a huge
identify
ego
as
thing.
trans. Yes, exactly. Of like, well, you were born female, so even though we have the same level of testosterone in our systems, but that does make it tricky to know, how do you gauge a trans man with hormone levels. And again, I don't know these answers, so they're but it's just the trans community is so small, and really people are just learning about it. And the big one was Caitlyn Jenner coming out. That was gigantic. That's what thrust the trans community into the spotlight, because of the amount of followers that the Kardashians had. Then you start going, oh my God, I do know somebody who's trans, even if you know them from social media. That's what threw our community into the spotlight, because gay marriage was just barely getting passed when Caitlyn Jenner came out. So they were still dealing with gay marriage rights. And then all of a sudden it was like trans. And you're going to see that a lot. The way that they treated the fear of like gay marriage. Now that is the laws are changing, so there's less to fight with it. Now you're going to see people go to the trans community of, you're not this, da 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 da, blah blah, because the gay, and again, even gay marriage and gay rights are still, people are still getting killed because they're gay. People are still getting harassed. It's not like, they talk about racism. Racism is not over. Gay lack of gay tolerance is not over. It's happening. But now you'll see it's turning towards the trans community.
Do you think that I guess the ignorance of like towards like gays or trans, did you ever see that there was like a difference in that, or do you think were you treated the same in general?
In what way?
Like if like when you were like when you first came out, when you thought you were gay, right? And
Mm.
how people treated you, was there a difference of being treated like as a gay person versus like transitioning? Was there a difference in how people were treating you? I know that you mentioned already like how they don't identify you as a man, but like I guess experiencing all like I guess the hate, right? Is there like a difference of that, or do you feel like it's just all the same?
It's hard because when I came out, I was in high school. I mean, it was around the time of like Ellen coming out, which was such a huge deal. And I actually went to prom with my girlfriend. People knew we were out. People knew we were together, and we got harassed for it. And then at prom, we were threatened. People were there. They were going to jump us in the parking lot. But luckily, we had an amazing group of friends that surrounded us and was like, made sure we were never alone. Which now you have like gay prom. Like it's like it's so bizarre to see the progress where you have, oh no, there's like my LGBTQIA plus club at high school, in high school. I'm like, oh my God, it was only me and one other person out in like a 2000 student high school. Um, so it's changed a lot. So it's hard for me to say what the difference is, because being 15 then and 38 now, so much has changed. But I am nervous of what happens when I'm read as a man, like in a bar, and some dude wants to like pick a fight with me, thinking that I'm a guy, right? Or what happens if they read me as a man and then somehow find out that I'm female born and they want to pick a fight with me? You start messing with people's core values and core beliefs, which is what gay marriage did, and which is what trans is doing. Of you're picking apart what people to believe are solid foundations. And when you start doing that, or when you represent that, that makes a lot of people very angry and insecure and aggressive and mean, because you're saying, I do not fit in what you believe the foundation is. And people don't like that very much.
Right. I think like because the whole morality changed too. Like people like want to stick to like I guess old traditions or in some sort of way they feel attacked or whatnot. I guess with this movement, right? And you brought up that great point. Like it's like it's picking at their foundations now. They're questioning themselves. Like okay, so who am
Hmm.
I really? And then I guess the paranoia starts kicking in, and then they have to take it out on someone. So they take it out on your community or even the gay community, and that's where like you get all the really crazy hate crimes and whatnot. And
Hmm.
um, I can only imagine like the fear of that, like just being like because racism is different compared to how I guess the trans and gay community are being hated on too. Like there's a huge difference in that because now it's not so much about like your skin color anymore. Now it's like your I guess your who you are, like your inner person, right? And that I don't know. I can only imagine like being fearing for your life like that, and that because I can only like imagine like a minority who is already afraid because of their race, and then like if they're trans or gay, and then you gotta like it's like double the amount of like just being aware and being afraid for yourself.
Well, yeah, the in our community, the people that get harassed, beaten, and murdered the most are trans women of color because you've hit every single vulnerable spot. You've got a minority, you've got somebody as a woman, so already looked at as a little bit less than, and then a different skin color. Those are the people that are most at risk in our community is trans women of color, uh, which it's horrible. It's horrible for all the reasons. All the reasons.
And I do want to ask you this too, Jensen. Like, did you at some point also kind of like did you have that where you feared for your life at one point? Like, I know that you said you were threatened at school, but like now as an adult making this transition here, do you still feel that, or do you feel more comfortable now with yourself?
I've never been actively threatened as far as like I feel like my life is in danger. Like I don't have a situation that's happened where I go, okay, this person could kill me kind of thing. So I definitely haven't had that. Is the fear there? Yes, absolutely. Because I think that was another thing about like coming out publicly. And though I don't have like millions of followers, I have people that I knew I was going to hit a nerve and they weren't going to like it because it was a lot of a specific type of person that followed my videos. Not a ton, or not that wasn't the entirety of it, but I knew by coming out it was going to hit a nerve, and I knew that I was going to get nasty stuff, and I was preparing for that. Um, so that is always a fear of being out publicly and going, somebody could easily find my address. It would take probably like 5 minutes and $25, right, to find my address. This is a risk that I'm going to take to come to do it and come out publicly.
Just thinking of it, like I can't I don't think I'll ever experience it, but like just think about it and just try to sympathize what you and your community go through. Like I feel like it's terrible to always kind of feel like you got to be on your toes, where you always got to feel defensive in a way.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I can only imagine how scary that is. But I'm so glad that that you're willing to tell your story too, and especially with your platform. And I think that's a great way to share that not everyone is the stereotype, or not everyone is as crazy as on the media and whatnot. And I'm really glad that you're being fearless in with your story. And honestly, like to all the people who don't like you, they were never your fans.
Yeah. Well, I got a very, very sweet comment from a longtime fan. He messaged me and he said, this really brought up you coming out brought up a lot for me, and I had to make a choice of do do I love the person or do I love the form? And he really had to think about it. And he's like, and I decided, I love the person. I love who you are, regardless of what form you are in. So whether you have, the mohawk and the painted nails and breasts, or whether you have a beard and, you know, killer biceps. He did not say that. I added that in. But that was one of the sweetest things that I've gotten from people, is where they have to make a choice. They're like, this does bother me. I don't know why. I have to think about it. And then they choose to be like, yeah, but I know who Jen is. I know who this personality is. I know what they represent to me, and I'm choosing this option. And that means so much to me, because you're having to think about it.
That's honestly how I felt too, and I stuck with what I believed in. I thought, I've been following you for so long. Why would I get upset at something that you're doing personally? That's your decision. That's something that you wanted to do. That's something you've always felt. I don't have any right to kind of cut in and be like, all right, I don't want to support you anymore because of that. If I'm really following you because of your personality, then I should just stick with it. That's how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm honestly, John, I'm always gonna support you, and I'm so glad that that you took the time to do this too. And before I wrap things up, I want to ask you one last question,
Yep.
and um, this is gonna be like kind of I'm gonna be really direct with this. So because of your transition, have you thought about going in, like, to, I guess, have surgery for philapsty? Is that how it's pronounced? I was looking that up.
You can say bottom surgery.
Bottom surgery. Okay,
Yeah.
I was like spending all day trying to pronounce it. I was like, whatever.
Phalloplasty.
Phalloplasty. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for correcting me. I feel like I felt so dumb just trying to say. I'm like, well, how do you pronounce this?
Yeah. And that's one of those things of like, you can absolutely ask those kind of things. Don't be afraid, because that's how you learn, right? If we were learning any subject in school, or a language or anything, we would have a teacher, and we would find that out and say, well, how do you pronounce this, or what is the correct way? So don't be ashamed in not knowing. I don't even know half the stuff that's going on in my own community. Like, so we're all learning, and nobody is born knowing about trans people, right? We have to learn. So yeah, before I get into that, I just want to honor, like, that you are being vulnerable and saying, I don't understand this, I don't know, but I'm willing to ask questions. I'm willing to put myself out there, even though I might stumble over stuff like that. What you're doing takes a lot of courage, and I appreciate it. And I know that somehow I don't know how it's going to take shape. Maybe this podcast, maybe you just having interactions with other people, you know, as you continue on with your life. But I know somewhere you're going to really help somebody become educated or explore themselves a little bit deeper, because you being willing to explore what this is, what it means to you, what it means to your community. um, I just truly believe you're going to help somebody. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and thank you too, because like with my podcast, my real end game for my podcast really is always about like self expression, and that's because that's something I struggled with growing up, like being able to express who I really am as a person, and I've always been insecure as a person growing up, and still am to this day, but with podcasting that kind of like helped me to let loose a little bit, and I find it very crazy that too, because like a lot of the artists that I follow kind of struggled with that. Like Freddie Mercury's one of my favorite singers, and he struggled with self-expression. That's why he was very, um, I guess you can say, flamboyant with how he was on that stage presence. But like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very inspired by not just him, but like a lot of other artists too, kind of like who struggle to find a way to express who they really are, so they use a creative platform to do it. And And that's where like that. And that's why I was, I asked you to be on the podcast too, because like what you're doing is a form of self-expression, and it's something that I think everyone needs to do.
I hope people do it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm honored that you would ask me. And then as far as, yeah, you can just say bottom surgery, and that I don't think so. I, I don't really have a lot of dysphoria um, with my genitals, so that is not top on my list of things to do. Because really, the important thing for me was having my breasts removed, because that was a huge, huge place of dysphoria, and because my breasts were very large, even for my size, um, they were very large, and so getting those removed was a big thing. And then now realizing that I do want to uh, go to the grocery store and be called sir. That's a big deal to me. But as far as like as far as my genitals, that's not a big deal for me. Now that might change, you know. Um, we'll see. But no, I'm good. I just want a beard. I just want a flat chest and a beard right now, and I'm good.
And I hope you get that beard too. Because I think that'd be really awesome to see you with like a full beard. I'm like, okay, that is definitely Jensen right there.
Yeah. I hope so. I think it's looking good. I think there's a good chance, but I think it's going to take a couple years. But I think it's going to happen. But you know what I thought of? I thought I had this thought that if I kept doing videos, like let's just say I stopped doing videos for like 5 years and I come back and start again, and then you see Jen Trani and Jensen Trani and being like, "Well, I wonder if they're brother and sister."
I think it will get to that point. Definitely with the side by side that photo that I'm looking forward to. I think
Oh,
that'll
yeah.
that'll really trick people up. Like, are they twins or? I think that'll really trick people up.
Because I'd have totally different body shape, different voice, different facial hair. But yeah, again, the thing that I'm going to send you is it's not crazy like holy crap, it's two different people, but you'll be able to see for sure that my face is 100% changing. It's going to continue to change. Like I'm just at the beginning of all this. I'm such we call it baby trans.
Yeah, you should definitely do like guess like a timeline of that too. I think that'll be really helpful too for like people who are maybe that are considering changing, and that way they can see like some sort of progress and they can be like, okay, that's what's gonna happen.
Well, that's also why I'm doing the video series. Um, because we're just going to check in a couple times um, a year with the my transgender journey on YouTube, um, so that you see the slow progress of it, and you get the check-ins of what is happening now, what's going on now, instead of just the here's my before and here's my after. Because you see a lot of that stuff. Or be like, I transitioned 7 years ago. This is what I look like as a woman. This is what I look like as a man, which is awesome. But I do think what we're doing in this series is very special and unique, because my followers will be able to basically be on the journey with me instead of just the before and after.
Yep, and I agree with that. I think that's a great way to share like the experience. That way they can, uh, you know, people who may not know you, like that way there's some way that they can relate to you too. Like, okay, so this is who they are, this is their journey of the change, like breaking step by step, like what you've gone through, and I think that way it'll slowly like get to them. Like it'll okay, like they're gonna just take it a small portion at a time instead of like
Yeah.
seeing the big change one after the other. So I think
Yeah.
that's great.
I'm gonna email you the two pictures now. So the one is when I think I was like a week on T, and then the other one is like from last week, I think. And again, it's very subtle, very, very, it's not this big like, holy crap. But you'll be like, yep, that's right.
So was there anything that you wanted to plug or shout out?
Shout out to Fender Play. I'll shout. That's I work on Fender Play and do online content for Fender, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm proud of the product and all the teachers that work on it, and the amount of time and effort and the crew. It's just an awesome thing to be a part of. And then, yeah, if anybody wants to follow the journey on Instagram, I'm just at Jen Trani, JenTrani, and Trani is my real last name. I just got lucky. But yeah, you can find me all over the internet teaching guitar, being wacky.
I'm looking forward to the photo. I'm not gonna share it. I'll wait till you do it first. That way, yeah, that way you can do it first. I want you to be the one that shares it. That way, and then once that's up, I'll help you share that too and share your story. But again, thank you so much for this, Jen. This means a lot to me as a fan as well of your work, and like this doesn't affect my view of who you are. You know, like this is very helpful and like informative for me too, and to any listener that's tuning in. Like I think this is a great way to, like people don't really talk about these kind of things anymore, and it's always just assumptions, and so people like are so quick to attack. So I feel like a lot of what we're doing here, it's great to help educate people too.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story, and you've always been so kind to me as a follower, and I've appreciated that from the beginning, and then especially you being such a great advocate. I really needed that because I was very scared that I was going to lose everybody, and so having fans and followers and friends like you that are just like, no, I got you. I mean, that means the world, because I was prepared to lose everything, and I didn't. I lost some things, and I gained more, and I gained way more than I lost. And just know, like, for the listeners, and I'm sharing my story, but every trans person has a different story, so don't assume that because this is where I'm at and this is what I want, that all trans people want this. Everybody's different. Everybody's trying to navigate their gender and their expression, and it's a moving target. So this is just my story.
Thank you so much, Jen, and I look forward to to see more of your content. Keep that up too, and again, thank you so much for all the years of just guitar tips and all that stuff. And I hope to see you again soon. If you ever tour back in Michigan again, I hope to see you. I'll definitely go out and go out of my way to come see you perform. And I'm very grateful, and I'm happy for you that you're able to do what you're doing, and I'm very happy for you.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Before I officially wrap things up, I do want to just shout out to LP and Hmong for letting me use their instrumental for my podcast. And if you live in the Boyne City, Michigan area, or around that area up north, make sure you guys check out Indochina Gardens. That's one of the best restaurants in the state of Michigan. They have the best like Chinese style food. It's not that typical orange chicken stuff. It's like legit food. It's great service and great people there. So make sure if you're around that area, check them out. And again, Jen, thank you so much. Again, I cannot thank you enough. I sound like a broken record, but thank you so much because, man, you're just a great person, and that's the best way I can put it. And thank you.
Thank you.
All right. To the listeners, you can make sure you can find all the information in the descriptions on YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and make sure you follow Jen on all her other platforms on his platforms. I'm sorry,
it's okay.
on his platforms, and support Jen in his journey. And thank you, and have a great day. If you enjoyed this episode, follow my Instagram at RickyVang92, RICKYVANG92, and follow Popluck Podcast on Facebook.com/PopluckPodcast.